Right under their feet was a road stretching into the depths of the quarry. Between the boulders and the heaps of rubble stood the excavator, tilted to one side, its lower bucket jammed into the side of the road. There was nothing else to see on the road, except the twisted black stalactites resembling thick spiral candles and the large number of black splotches visible in the dust, as if someone had spilled asphalt. That was all that was left of them, and you couldn't even tell how many there'd been. Maybe each splotch had been one person, one of the vulture's wishes. This one, that's the vulture coming back safe. Guten Morgen, meine Freundin. Today I'll be making my attempt at explaining what is quite possibly pafl's most cryptic and seemingly contradictory song, The Mill. Now, before we begin, if you're new, pafl is a teenage drama set in Eastern Europe with its setting inspired by the science fiction novel Roadside Picnic and its very loose cinematic adaptation, Stalker. Now with the pafl songs, The Mill has the most connection to these works, meaning I can mention the comparisons as they appear, rather than dumping them all into the intro. Also, this is technically the 5th song in the series, but since it deals with mostly different characters and events, previous knowledge is not required. Also, I'll mention here for the sake of clarity, the mill constantly jumps between two major events in the pafl timeline. First, in present time, it's Olga and Nikita guiding Yuri in his first trip to the zone, and second, it's flashbacks to a particularly bad trip to the zone, which I will call Kolya's trip, for the lack of a better name. The song's opening is Sergei giving instructions on how to traverse the zone, and it is filled with references to Roadside Picnic. First of all, requiring free people is standard procedure for non-illegal expeditions. The longer road safer is just the truth, since the zone has endless unnoticeable traps. Watch as the boat's trajectory wavers is referring to the most common and iconic trap of the zone, the bug trap, a sci-fi thingamajig with its own gravity, which can be spotted by throwing bolts around. The rest of these whispers don't have quotes around them, meaning they are likely Olya talking to herself. This makes sense, given they are more vague, almost just words of comfort to soothe her nerves. Now we get our first mention of Kolya's trip. To cut ahead of the chase, years ago, Olga and Sergei went on a mission into the zone with Nikita's little brother, Kolya. For whatever reason, they entered the grinder, a trap that turns you into dust instantly, or I don't actually know exactly what it does, it's very unclear, from which in the novel you have no chance of escaping. Sergei was barely able to pull Olga out, but Kolya did not get so lucky. For this, Nikita hates Olga, believing she should have died instead of his brother, but Olga never considered herself guilty. After the mission, Sergei quit stalking, and now only plans routes and trains new recruits, like Yura. He remains unaware of the tension between Olga and Nikita, despite him dating the former, and so keeps sending them on missions together. Back to present day, as the trio explores more of the zone, and we see more of its wonders, the song keeps referring to Olga's mysterious past, mentioning ghosts and sinking lower than the low. This could mean that she does in fact feel bad for Kolya's death, but even if she does, she isn't willing to admit it. As they rest in a room right above the grinder and the lyrics cut out for a minute, Nikita tells Yuri some vague speech about Olga. Now, from my memory, across the novel, the movie and the games, there are no female stalkers. Their rarity is also brought up in pafl, mentioning the danger of stalking, the physical strain, and the effects that the zone has on your reproductive system. Olga is one of the only female stalkers, and yet, she still never developed a feel for the zone, which is usually a death sentence. So then, how does she survive? Well, they like to call it intelligence, careful planning, but those are just pretty ways of saying she lucks out. The surface level interpretation of this line is that Olga is the head of the facility's logistical department, meaning that she can manipulate the zone patrols, and that level of power is looked down upon by regular stalkers, out of jealousy. There is also another interpretation, but это позже. I truly don't know what to make of the lyrics that play as Sergei and Olga leave the grinder. The only loose thread I can pull on here is I won't find her, implying that she had a personal reason to enter the grinder, and that now she's come to terms with something, perhaps the death of a friend. The object that the trio came looking for is located in an overgrown safe close to the grinder. It's a giant battery, and while getting it out, Yura finds a little glowing cube. Olga and Nikita find it to be harmless as well as of little value, so he keeps it. After the mission, the two survivors rest, and Sergei tells Olga that he's going to quit stalking, saying that he's going to save what's left, that being his only remaining family, Sanya. As they start leaving the zone, they are suddenly spotted by the patrol guard, who has been ordered to shoot trespassers in sight. The guard shoots Nikita, but just before taking another shot, he recognizes Olya as one of his supervisors, giving Yuri a chance to shoot him in cold blood. Then, more guards show up, capturing Olga and Yuri, and the song ends on a series of lyrics similar to the ending and the beginning of False Disposition. The mill is often considered the hardest pafl track to interpret, giving its pacing and overall mystery surrounding Olga. As you noticed, I myself can't place all of the lyrics. A lot of information around the song and its events is also cryptic, or rather, exposited through strangely specific language. Not to mention, so much of what the lyrics allude to doesn't seem to be explained in the lore doc. A while back, I even hesitated on making this video, given that I didn't know much about what the song truly meant. In the end, however, as is sometimes the norm with pafl, some details simply can't be properly speculated on, and so I resolved to make this video even though I may not have the full picture. And then I read the lyrics again. Okay, so the main thing that put me off at first was the fact that Olga is mourning a friend, specifically a female friend. We know that the person who died in the mission that the mill refers to, Kolya's trip, is male, implying that there's another person whose death she's responsible for. Not to mention, of course, that she never saw herself as responsible for Kolya's death, so there's no reason to mourn him. Another strange bit are the 40 specific mentions of the zone's layout in the lore doc. By that I mean the mention of the room where they rest being right above the meat grinder, and the room in which they find the battery being right next to the grinder. Other than that, obviously, there's the mention of luck, Victor saying that Sergei didn't have a chance to save Kolya, and that Ferry felt it important to specifically bring attention to Nikita saying that the mother of his children, Nadia, is dead. Now, some of this information might be ringing a bell if you're a fan of either Stalker or Roadside, since you'd know about the zone's most mysterious and bizarre artifact, which both stories are somewhat written around. An artifact which is found directly after the grinder, in fact, and what it requires a price to fully reach. So, as you might have guessed, it is my theory that Olga, even before Kolya's death, sacrificed someone to the wish granter. Wish granter changes slightly from movie to book, but I'd wager a guess that pafl draws more inspiration from the novel interpretation, given that it isn't explored much in the movie. This is actually because the movie sucks ass and you've been psyoped into liking it. The way that the golden sphere works in the Roadside is that it grants the user the thing they desire most, with the price being sacrificing someone to the grinder in the quarry where the spear can be found. Since Olga's shortcomings as a stalker are brought up so often, we could guess that she might want some sort of unique advantage, perhaps a metaphysical amount of luck. Next bit of evidence, in the Q&A, we get to see Sergei and Alexandra's dead father, Viktor Kazarin, saying that he doesn't blame Sergei for not saving Kolya, adding the kid had no chance. Okay, so I was editing this part and I realized that this is Kolya, not Victor, and I just want to say it is not my fault that in the Q&As Kolya looks way older than Victor and also does not look like his male counterpart at all anyway. This implies either he knows that there was no way to save Kolya from the grinder, or conversely, that Olga sacrificed someone to the grinder in exchange for luck to the zone, and that Sergei saving her was a result of that luck. Now, if I am right, I do have two follow-up questions. First of all, who did she sacrifice? Well, we know it was a woman, from lines like I won't find her, she's bathed in youthful glow, and Ona idet za mной. Listing the female characters that we know of, Alexandra Kazarina is too important and still alive. Anya Beletskaya, too important, still alive. Yana, not important enough, still alive. Dr. Temnova sounds like a good fit since she knows Olga, but she is alive as of Comfort Zone, meaning that she was probably alive as of Kolya's trip. But it is Dr. Temnova, so I do say probably. Anyway, there is one female character that isn't still alive, that being Nadia, Nikita's wife. Now, I can't find too much information on her, maybe I could if I looked harder, but the best information we got comes in Message Lost. But the more important part here is Nikita's post-death interview, where there is a very drawn-out reveal of Nadia being dead. In Message Lost, we learn that Nikita considers her reliance on him pathetic, so she might have tried to go to the zone herself to prove to him that she's not worthless. It's possible, in that scenario, that Olga triggered the grinder by accident, which I'm pretty sure is possible, and that during Kolya's trip she was trying to use the grinder willingly to bring her back. I'm spitballing here, honestly, but while spitballing, Nikita does mention having two children that he never met, and there just happen to be two random orphans in the story. How curious. Although I do think that Nikita is too young to have a 16-year-old child in current day, but, makes you think, right? Anyway, my second question. Why does Ferry mention the location of the place where they find the battery? It seems strange and specific. Well, if you all recall, that's not the only thing they find in that safe, and as of writing, so as of 100 Epitaphs, we don't actually know what the glowing cube that Yura found is. So let's recount, right? A perfectly shaped artifact found right next to the grinder that seems completely unnotable on first glance? Well, I think you see where I'm going with this. I think Yura might have just damn well done what neither Vulture or Regic could on the roadside and pulled the wish granter out of the zone.